Where is it? Right.
I don't care if it takes 3 months to make one video.
All right, artwork's better.
That menace, I can't believe he said it to my face. Aardvark's better. Nah, I'm just kidding. Hello everyone, my name is Kist and welcome back to Railroads Online. We are continuing our Trackling New Horizons series, and before you go, wait, what has been happening? What did I just watch? Let's go ahead and roll the intro. It's been so long since I've actually made a dedicated track video, and I think it's been long overdue. Now, as you can probably guess by the title, we are continuing our Trackling New Horizons series. And before you go, wait, Kiss, this isn't Lake Valley, I want to talk to you about some things and what's going to be happening in the future. I'm happy with how things are going in the game as of right now, and I'm just really excited to finally play the game again in my true form. So what are we going to be doing today? Well, if you've watched the Trackling New Horizons episode 1 video, I talked about I'm going to be building the Lake Valley map. That's not happening anymore. Instead, I've changed my goal and changed my direction for the game itself. And how do I mean? Well, instead of building on Pine Valley, on Lake Valley, or Aurora Falls and just trying to fill out a map in its entirety, maybe you can fly around and look at some things. Instead of just going around location to location, building the map, and just doing a lot of other things, I think it's best to do case-by-case scenarios. Kind of taking after the maintenance away where I just focus on certain spots in people's worlds, same thing but in case of building it. Let's give a hypothetical. The sawmill here on Pine Valley. It is very notorious because of this corner right here, this area, trying to curve from this crane to the right and getting over there, or just how do I actually work out of this area? Well, maybe for one episode we would just focus on learning how to build this, understanding this entire industry and its current orientation in its entirety. Maybe we can talk about other orientations, maybe stuff that makes this a better industry to actually run. And we're going to go into both real life principles, just some philosophies, and again, just trying to understand how things work. If not the sawmill, let us go over to the iron mine. As I am getting closer, you can see that there's this giant line curving through the mountain. This is what we call the dev intended path for the iron mine. How do I actually build it? Is there something else I can do to not use it? What about this? Why is this here? Can I use this for something? Is there a path that maybe goes to the right? There are so many things that we can talk about and I can show you to help understand how to play the game and how to build at these locations and build at these places. And I think it would be worthwhile to, instead of just trying to encompass a whole map or anything, to do case-by-case scenarios. Another one that's been controversy or just been popping up recently is, how do I build out of the Aurora Falls Valley? How do I leave the freight depot on Aurora Falls? How do I get out of the basin and up towards the mountain or down to the sawmill? There are just so many things we can actually talk about and showcase. So, I'm going to extend this to all of you. If there is a certain problem or a certain part of the maps, anyone, Pine Valley, Lake Valley, Aurora Falls, if there's anything that you guys want to see, please go ahead and comment it down below. If you can, be as specific as possible, and we can talk about these different cases, these different locations. I want to hear from you guys on what is the biggest problems you guys are facing when it comes to Railroads Online. Now, this said, enough of the little intro, enough of the filler, let's actually get to the content. What are we going to be doing today? Well, as you can see, I am just next to the freight depot on Pine Valley, over here, and I want to talk about building Railyards. I asked the Trackling Discord if there is one thing, or what are some possible scenarios that they would like to see talked about. How do I actually build yards? And I'm going to do this here in Pine Valley, and I plan to show you my take on one in Lake Valley as well. So, how do we do this? I am not going to explain how yards function, how rail yards actually operate. I'm not going to go into the know-how on the specifics. But if you are interested in to learn how to make a rail yard or the different designs into rail yards, I really encourage checking out this video by Dubai Trains. Railroad Yards Explained, with over 25 track or yard track plans and every detail explained. He goes over the different types of yards. As we dash around here, you can see in this case, he's explaining how rail yards or railroads would intersect. We go into the different types of yards. He talks about classification, maybe how to actually do it with a station in mind. And he gives us different rail yard ideas that we can do to actually make a yard. By the time we get to the end, look at this yard with a station. This seems like something on Lake Valley because the freight depot is right there. And there are different things we can do. Maybe a bigger yard, maybe one with a turntable. But you can start to see this looks like an actual rail yard we would see in real life, at least here in Northern America especially. And there's so many things we can do. And I really like it. Again, I would really encourage you checking out this video. I'm going to link it in the description and maybe here in the top right with the info tab. But it's just very helpful. And if you want to understand on the same level, at least designs and how to do it, again, check this out. The main problem we're going to be tackling in Railroads Online is the actual building part of it. How do I physically build a rail yard and make sure it's both good and believable? And there's a secret to this. Switches. Switches are going to be your best friend when it comes to rail yards. If you think it's all about, oh, I need to do all this math and stuff, I kid you not, none of the building I've ever done requires math. I've never tried to plan out a geometric thing for it. The only time I ever did math for building in Railroads Online was some of the super elevation calculations, but not important. We're going to talk about rail yards. So in this case, I'm not going to be too picky about size, but I want to cover 3 things today. A sorting yard, engine storage, and input-output. Those main things. If I wanted to intake a train, sort a train, and output it, and then what if I would need to have some engine maintenance? I just want to build a simple yard that does all 3 of those things. So without further ado, let us go ahead and walk closer to this mountain. Hill. This is a hill. That's a mountain. This is a hill. Good. The first thing we're going to want to do is go into track construction and just pick any spline. If you want to be exactly, what's this, north to south? Yes. If you want to be north to south, 90 degrees or 270 is going to be your best friend. So we're just going to pick a main line. I don't want to do too big of pieces, so I think I'm going to do 100 and 100. So we have, let's say, a 300 meters long spline because I did 3 100 meter pieces. Aha! Very simple. Just a nice straight piece of track that we're going to use to build. And let's say this is it. Maybe this is all we have for space. Only 300 meters. What we're then going to want to do is get a switch. So, left or right? This doesn't really matter too much. It just depends on what you like. For me, I always like my switch stands on the outside of just where the turnout is, because I think it's clear to see which direction you are facing. If you don't know how to change the links, well, if you just go get a switch, it should give you the options down below. If you look right here, for me it says Q and E. It's where the track actually is to link it. So once we get our switch in place, the next we got to talk about is the yard itself. When we have 300 meters of track between our next 2 switches, if we put a switch down there anyway. And the thing I'm thinking about is something called a yard lead. Now, a yard lead is just a certain amount of track before a yard and a main line. To help give us a better understanding what this actually is, and to really see what yards can truly look like, I want to take inspiration from the real world, specifically looking at Union Pacific's Englewood Yard, found in Houston, Texas, United States. This thing is a monster yard. It's huge, to say the least. However, some of the concepts we just talked about a few minutes ago are still present and amplified in this yard. And I don't think I can truly give you the sense of how big this yard is, but here are some cool photos found on Google of the yard itself. Here's a brief map view of the actual yard. And I want to focus in on the right half of the yard, the actual yard lead. The purpose of a yard lead is to give space for any of the engine tracks or any trains coming into the yard. It's where trains can finally pull off the main, or for switchers to pull trains out of the classification yard or the actual input-output yard and just give themselves plenty of space to move the consist around and do whatever they need to do for their operations. I have a feeling you already understand what this is, but to prove that it was not just common for the standard gauge, it was found on the narrow gauge. This is a track overview of the East Broad Top Rock Hill Furnace Yard, and if we zoom right here near the bottom, you can see what looks like a double track or a siding. This is the actual yard lead for the shop, and this is proof to me that this is not just common for the standard gauge, we can actually do this stuff in the narrow gauge. So without further ado, let's hop back into Roads Online and let's actually build our yard, starting with the yard lead. The ultimate rule when it comes to yards is clearing the main line, keeping this part of the track clear at all times if or when possible. So if we just do, let's say, a switch, great. But what if I need to do an operation where my engine needs to go past the switch to pick up cars? Well, then my engine is going to be impeding the main line, it's going to be on this switch, and what if I have my buddy coming down from the sawmill to go to the oil field? It's just going to be this whole hassle. So is there something we can do to help extend the amount of space we have between our main line and our yard? Not really, I will admit to you. There doesn't seem to be a lot of space here that we can afford to actually make a good rail yard, unless we sacrifice on the amount of tracks we have. However, there is a very simple fix for this. Let's say we want a yard lead. A yard lead is going to help with any switching operation. A makeshift one you can do is if you take a right-facing switch with the stand on the right side, this one here on the left, and we change the link point. We don't want on the turnout, we want on the straight piece. We're going to want to link it like so. Now, our yard lead can be this one. So we can extend this out, and if we have a Y or our main line curves in any way, we can make the yard lead follow like so. But now, if I need to do a operation of any sort, I can pull my trains onto this track. So once we have our yard lead in place, and we can refine how this looks later and all the spacing and everything, at another point, we need to actually talk about the yard itself. We still have 3 criteria: input, output, storage, and engine placement, engine housing. How do I do that? Well, I guess I can make 3 yards. I can make an input yard, an output yard, and a sorting yard or whatever, a classification yard. Nah, we don't have the space to do that. We're not a super rich company. We don't have all this money in the world. So we have to find a better way to help compact everything. And there is a very simple way to do this. The actual simple point of the yard that we're going to be doing is essentially we're just going to use our switches and we're just going to build out like this. We're just going to build a diagonal of switches, a switch tree if you will, and each switch is just going to act as a lane for us to use. And I like putting the switch stands opposite each other, so this one shouldn't clear, or this one shouldn't hit any trains. Even right now, class 125 or the rotary, it shouldn't hit. But now we actually have the start of our yard. And what we can do is we can designate a track for a function. Let's say I have a train coming from the oil fields that need to be sorted so we can get the logs or the sawmill stuff reloaded into it. Our train comes in to this track, an input track. We can make this input west, input east, or I guess input north. And then once we actually start from the other side, we can have a second track that is input south. So we can designate a track for a function, and we're going to do that here. But before we actually build tracks, we need to talk about the other side. Working from one side of a rail yard is fine, I guess, if you know what design you're going, but I'm kind of winging it, just feeling things out, and I don't know a lot of stuff. I don't have a lot of stuff planned out. So I think I'm going to go make the yard symmetrical on the other side. So we're going to copy this over there. And now that we're on the other side of the yard, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab a right-facing switch with the stand on the outside, like so. Beautiful. I want to keep things symmetrical. I cannot do this straight off the get-go, because remember, we added an extra switch for a yard lead. If I were to connect these two pieces, like a normal yard. Ready? This happens. Oh, I can't fly. No. It curves. This doesn't make any sense. It doesn't look good. So I'm going to delete it and go all the way back over here. We need to do the same things. We need to add a switch for a yard lead. It's not the most common thing in the world. If you don't want a yard lead on this side, then at least put a switch over here. Let's say we don't want a yard lead on this side. We still want to make sure the spacing is correct. So we just put a switch. Ta-da! Now, the start of a yard is beginning. Let's say we're going to have 6 tracks. We're going to have 6 tracks for each thing. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool. If I fly up into the air, we can actually see the shape of our yard start to form. Ta-da! It's a rather small yard, but I'm happy with its shape. I think 6 tracks is too much for the space, because if this is our 6th track, we're not going to be able to fit anything in here unless it's cabooses or something specific. So let us say, I think we'll do 5 tracks. I think 5 tracks will be good. We'll do input track. We'll do an input track here on the long side, output track, and then we'll do the next 3 for sorting. That way we have plenty of space and plenty of options for our engineers and the rest of our players. We're going to keep this track though for another reason. So the next part is, once you got all the actual switches in place, you just go ahead and connect. The spline length, I would not try to do multiple splines, because spline count be annoying and it's just easier to connect. So you just dash back and forth. And well done. This is looking pretty good so far. Another thing I like just visually is, to me, you can clearly see where the yard is and where the main line is. This nice little gap of separation helps just separate where we are on the map. And if I zoom out a little bit more, we can start to see the actual functionality. Again, this yard lead is going to prove very beneficial, because when it comes to sorting all these trains, you need room to pull out. So having an extra yard lead or extra space is going to help with that. So now, what next? I think just for sanity purposes, let us take our signs and let's us actually label the switch stands. We're going to go to sign text, and I'm going to put input A. And I'm going to put it over here, just because we have a clutter of switch stands. It might be beneficial to put it here, it just might look weird. So next, I'm going to put outputs. I'm going to put it right here next to the switch. Turn it so our engineers and everybody else can see it. Then we're going to go and fill out the rest of them. And excellent, I think that looks really good. This may not be realistic, because if you're actually working in a yard, there's diagrams for you to actually follow and need to do. But for us, for Railyards Online, I think this is fine. Helps just the multiplayer aspects, so we actually know what we're doing. And if you're building by yourself, I think you'll know what it is, but it doesn't help just to label things. So we have input, our output on this stand, sorting 1, sorting 2, and sorting 3. Now that we actually have the yard done, I guess for symmetry purposes, you can put the signs on the other side, which I may do later, but for right now, it'll be okay. The next step is creating our engine storage. How do we actually, put other stuff? Well, I need some maintenance capacity, so it may be good to put a coal tower and a water tower, but how do we do that? Technically, we have 2 directions stuff is coming in from, but I'm not making a Y. To put a Y here or something, that'd be kind of ridiculous. So there has to be something we can do to make an engine shed or an engine housing storage area. I don't know. We just need to add an extra part to this yard. I think I want to do it on this side, just to have some extra direction to our build. Well, we're not using the 6th lane, so I'm going to get rid of it finally. And I want to put a roundhouse. I think I'm just going to do our 4-stall roundhouse engine shed over here somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a crossover and then a right facing switch on the turnout, like so. And why? Well, remember, I want to put the engine shed over here, and the reason I did this was to make sure I have plenty of space to clear the actual engine or the switch stand. If I just did it like so, now you can see we're getting a lot closer, which I'm not personally comfortable with. So we don't want to do that. So we have plenty of space on this side. What I'm going to do is I still want to keep things compact because Rares Online, this map on Pine Valley does not have the most amount of space. I think we'll do this. And this way we can actually make a coal tower or just something. I'm going to extend this piece out quite a little bit because I feel like we will need it. Then we're going to get a coaling tower. I think that will be good. Let us check the... yeah, I think that's pretty good distance-wise. But this takes up a lot of space. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So the next thing I'm going to do is take my facilities. And we got to put it on the ground. So I'm going to get rid of the spline and put this on the ground. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let's see how well this track will connect. If it's a little curvy, I don't think it's the end of the world. Yeah, that looks fine. I think so. Just connect and clean up everything. And I want to add a water tower, and I think we can add maybe we can add the big one. Very nice. And then we can do the same thing here. We can just extend a piece out for 27 meters, and then we'll put a bumper. And now that I'm doing this, I am going to extend the other piece out. I guess I'll mention here, my trick for just making the end bumpers look good, is just use stone wall. I don't think you need to use groundwork. It's just too... ugh. You can link the stone wall to splines. That's what I like about it. And it helps just tell everybody, hey, there's a stopper here, stop. The next thing we can do, I think we can put a turntable here. You could, but nah. Let us extend this out ever so slightly. Actually, aha! Okay, just make a really long spline. Because with the engine shed, you can't link it to other things, but you can line up rails to it. Okay, that's lined up there, but I want it to be more symmetrical. Aha! So, let us get it kind of far away. And look at that! Seems like we have it roughly in line. So now if I take my turntable... oh, come on. We're going to use turntable 3, because, of course. And beautiful. It's a little high, but that is okay. We can just take this line and replace it. Yep. Might be a little janky, because this is now on a grade and everything, but I don't think it looks that bad in comparison. Now, the final thing we can do to make it... oh, wait, no! Uh-oh. That's a problem. So then, the obvious thing to do is we need to replace the turntable. Well, not replace the turntable, but the actual engine shed with the right stall as our demeanor. Now I'm just trying to eyeball it and get it as lined up as possible. Yes. So it may look a little off because of the symmetry, but this way we now know our engine shed is not impeding the main line in any facet. Let's see, did I get it pretty lined up? Wow, very nice. But because of pickiness, we're gonna link it here to make sure it's all well and good. Yeah, you can see just ever so slightly off. Okay, Kist, what is the next step? We have our yard in place, we have an engine shed. Well, I don't personally like having these rails go into nothing, so we're going to take the turntable real quickly, and we are going to add little stumps on the other side of the turntable for the engine shed. It's more of a safety thing and a realism thing. Okay, beautiful. Now we just take this, let us extend out. Aha! I'm now realizing that we can't make this one as long. I had a feeling we couldn't, so to make sure we have plenty of space and our trains are gonna be okay, I'm just gonna do 4 meters and then the bumper. And voila! We have our nice little turntable and engine facility in place, nice little stubs. It may not be big enough to fit a train or maybe big enough to fit a tender. However, it helps take up the space and actually give a sense of realism to the actual yard and what is everything going on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to extend our main line out a little bit just so we can say it goes somewhere. And if we actually fly up and take a look at our yard, look at that. Very nice. Very, very simple. We have our engine shed, looks very nice with our subs in the roundhouse, or in the turntable, my bad. We have coal and water, right? And we can add a sand house to really complete the trifecta. And we have our yard with input, output, and 3 sorting tracks. The last thing we gotta do is we gotta clean up this little spot, and then finish our yard lead and I guess extend our main line. And voila, I just extended our little main line around, and I changed the yard lead just ever so slightly, because if I add a switch here that I can now freely turn to head to the oil fields, it's not the end of the world, but it just helps give it some extra space and not impede our main line functionality. But let us take one final look of the actual shape of it. Ta-da! A nice, very simple yard. Now, this is only the beginning. This is only just a taste of what we can do. As you can see, we have our main line right here. We have our actual yard that again has a dedicated input, output, and sorting tracks. And then we have an engine facility and quote engine maintenance on the right. And it doesn't take up too much space on the map. It's like a nice big POI, but compared to our freight depot, I don't know. It doesn't seem that big to me, but big enough to actually have some fun and do some operations. And this seems like something we can do multiple times on a map. Maybe we can shorten up the distances here, possibly. Or not even this, you don't even need a roundhouse. We do have other facilities. If you just want to make 3 tracks and then put an engine shed or an outdoor engine shed, do that. Or if you just want to have 2 tracks, use an actual engine shed that is turned around. But you can actually use this to just plop and feed our tracks into. That could be it. So you can save even more space as there are multiple options. You don't need as many tracks. Maybe you just have input and output on the same track, then 2 sorting, or maybe you only have 1 track. Maybe you only have a siding. Again, the functionality or how you actually build it is based off the switches. Set the space you want to actually use. Maybe it's the entirety of this, like I did on the Tracklaying 101 save. I used basically this entire space to make a yard. You're going to use switches. Switches are your best friend. One thing I would recommend, as it's just a nice thing for switching operations on multiplayer, is to add a yard lead. Pine Valley and Lake Valley don't give us the most amount of space. I would say do this setup. Is from your main line, have a switch that goes into the yard, and then have a switch basically opposite for a yard lead. The yard lead allows you to pull things out, pull your consist out, and just give yourself space without impeding the main line. So if this is supposed to be a busy point, all the trains are meant to be coming through here, then leave your main line as clear as possible and leave the yard operations in the yard as much as possible. It just helps add to the realism and makes it more functional. And if you want to see how I do this and just check this out as well, I will be linking the save in a Google folder as well in the description. But we're not done just yet. I want to go to my Tracklaying 101 save and talk about the yard I have there. Here I am on my Tracklaying 101 save, where you can also find in the Google folder down below. And you can see I upped up the ante with our Railyard by a pretty big margin. I added my own custom roundhouse using big tracks and the engine sheds before the actual roundhouse asset was added, but that I don't want to talk about it too much. As you can see, you can take this stuff to a whole new level. There are other shapes we can do. As you can see here, if you use the 3-point switch, you can create a symmetrical yard. I did it over here as well on a bigger scale. Again, using the 3-point switch, you can create a symmetrical yard. If we go to the other side, I want to show you the other shape I used. So look here, we have our switches going to the left, but notice on the other side, it doesn't go back to the right. they are also facing to the left or to the right, depending on how you look at it. And this one creates more of a parallelogram as a shape instead of a trapezoid. So switches are going to be your best friend when it comes to designing this stuff. And if you guys want to see how to build these shapes in a convincing manner, and just maybe a part 2 to this, please let me know in the comments below. I'd like to see what you guys have to say. For me, this is my hump yard, and just this little hump can go the entirety of this yard here. And again, using our 3-point, using the 3-point, you can do a lot of stuff. And this yard is more extensive, has so many tracks, and it goes all the yada 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 yada. It does this whole thing. But for another time, perhaps. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kist, and before you go, I can see that not so many of you are subscribed. So, if you like this content and you want to see more of it, go ahead and like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any extra content from me and the shenanigans that might come along with it. That's it from me, everybody. My name is Kist, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.